Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for AXE Association Exchange. We'll get started in just a minute. While we're waiting, I know in Washington, D.C., we've had crazy weather, 90 degrees one day and 40 degrees the next. So I wanted to ask you all, what do you dislike most about the weather changes during the spring? And if you want to put that in the chat, that would be great. What do you dislike about the weather changes in the springtime, especially if you're in the mid-Atlantic area? And also let us know where you're from when you put your message in the chat. We'll be using the chat today for Q&A as well. Oh, Lindsay says it means the hot summer is coming to Southern California. Kim says the lack of rain here in South Carolina, we're in a severe drought. I'm sorry about that. You need about 30 inches of rain. Wow. Amy says, I'm in Southern California. Spring is the best time here. Lucky you. I'm wearing my winter coat today. Pollen and headaches. Yes, in Tennessee. Erica says, I agree, Erica. Suffering along with you in DC. We'll give everybody a couple of minutes to get in. And the question of the day is, what do you dislike most about spring? And I'm kind of basing it off of my own experiences in DC, where we're having 90 degrees one day and 40 degrees the next. So allergies, says Stephanie. Um, Marie says, I just lost her. Dislike the most about spring, always the pollen and the allergies. Yeah, for sure. Dominique says she's from Nova and she says allergies as well. Just a note to the group, can everybody see the three of us on the screen right now? Just making sure everybody has the ability to see us before we get started. Kim says she loves the flowers and the trees once everything comes alive. Yeah, me too. Oh, they only see one person. So, Kirk, maybe we're having a technical difficulty before we get started because we definitely want Tal, our speaker today, to be able to have her screen be shared with everyone. Everybody's camera on, everybody ready to go? Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany, who is our program coordinator for AXC, to introduce our speaker. And right before that, I have a couple of household items. We are going to be putting Q&A, and if you have a Q&A that comes up, a question that comes up during the session, please feel free to put that question in the chat, and we'll be monitoring the chat. Additionally, I wanted to invite everybody to our May AXC program, which is going to be Nunshi, Briefing and Managing Up the art of being exceptionally aware and effective at work. And our speaker is Joanna Pinetta. And Joanna also has a podcast called Associations Thrive, I believe. And some of you may know her from that. We're going to try to get our screen up right now as Tiffany introduces Tal.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm so pleased to introduce Tal today. She is the Chief Communications Officer for the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Um, I know many of you have probably read her bio. She has more than 20 years of experience in corporate communications and public affairs. She's worked for a lot of industries, IBM, Crown Castle, Nestle. I've known Tao for more than a decade. NATSO hired her to oversee a communication strategy for a very niche biofuel issue. And I'm really pleased to be able to tell this group that we won that issue. And I know that our comm strategy and our work with Tao played a huge role in that success. But since then, Tal has really graciously given me her time and her insights whenever I've imposed on her. She's incredibly skilled at creating communications that tell us how she thinks about her work and how she approaches her work, but without ever really touching on policy or a specific work issue. And so today she's bringing all of that experience here to help you elevate you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tal.
Thanks so much, Tiffany. I appreciate the introduction. I am going to put my presentation up for everybody. So give me a moment. And I know we're a bit short on time, so I'm gonna jump right in. Again, thank you so much for having me on today, and I'm thrilled to be able to present to you all about personal branding. I know that there probably are a range of folks here across the spectrum in the association world. So while I tailored this a bit for executive visibility, I absolutely will be able to talk about how this stuff is transferable depending on what level you are. So let's just jump right in. I'm gonna cover personal branding. A lot of people have thoughts on that. I know I have. Most people think about branding for an organization or a company and what it evokes. Personal branding and why we're talking about it here, really, if you do it right, can come through very strongly on LinkedIn. So I pulled a little bit of definitions for you to ground us in it. Harvard Business School says that personal branding is intentional and strategic practice defining and expressing your value. Really, I think what it comes down to is, what is it? Who are you? What do you value? What do you want people to come across? And how is it that you're shaping the perception of who you are? Really, in my mind, I think that is what kind of comes through clearly. What are you known for? What do people think about when they think of you? And there's a great opportunity, particularly in LinkedIn, to build that. And so I'm going to focus my presentation today specifically about the work that I've done to share my value and how I think and what I believe. So why is investing in LinkedIn valuable? I think answering the why is going to be very important for you specifically. So I pulled out a few that tend to be the most valuable from across the board of people I've spoken to. For me personally, my why in terms of why I invest is some years ago, I realized I had some things to say, some norms that I wish were, or things that I wish were norms about how to lead and how to manage, some perspectives about how things were changing in the communications perspective. So that motivated me. That was my why. So for a lot of you, that might actually be your why. There are other ones as well. LinkedIn is an incredible place to build a network and also to grow your sphere of influence. There are folks that maybe you're connected to because of your role. There might be organizations that you're involved with where you go to in-person gatherings. LinkedIn, if you let it and if you really engage, becomes its own sort of community. I have connected with incredible folks from all over the world who have expertise in my field just because I've been active on LinkedIn. And that's really enriched my perspective. It's enriched how I view my work, where the industry is going. So that certainly has been a really great benefit. For others, it attracts opportunities. I'll share a little bit later with you the kinds of things that have come to me just by posting my thoughts on LinkedIn. And for some, those opportunities may be because you're trying to grow your profile. Perhaps it's part of your role at an association. Perhaps you're looking at what's next with your career and you want to be more visible. Or frankly, maybe you're recruiting and you want to make sure folks know who it is that you are looking for and what they would get by working with you. So there's a whole range of opportunities that may come out if you do this right. The other thing too is posting who you are, what you believe, what you value, that can travel with you. If you're thinking beyond your current role in the current moment and you're really trying to show people who you are, this is an incredible opportunity to do that. So as people are thinking about you, all they need to do is scroll through your feed to understand what it is that you believe and what you do. And, if you're doing it right, that can really travel with you. And then interestingly enough, if you are set up correctly on LinkedIn, it is now being considered one of the top 2 most visible platforms that the large language models are citing, particularly if your content is public. So, think about the fact that I think LinkedIn has grown in importance and specifically has been ripe for opportunity to engage. Now, one of the first things that I think are important if you are going to, if you've decided what your why is, it's what do you have to say? What is it that you want to convey? What do you hope to come across? What do you hope to accomplish? So I won't go through this step by step, but really, as I'd mentioned to you, it starts with your why. I mentioned a little bit about my why, but what's yours? Why do you want to post? What do you have to say? Who needs to hear it? Asking those questions are going to really ground you in the why. I don't recommend getting into it until you figure that out. And then it's really helpful to take a step back and think about, what do I have to say? You may know generally what you want to post, but what is it that you want to post from a professional lens, a leadership lens? In my case, I like to talk about my personal philosophies as well. Those are all things that really together show your value in the way you think. And so then there are some other steps you can take. Things like, how do you turn it into from a content pillar to something thoughtful and constructive? What do you have to say about those things that you want to write about? What do you have to say that maybe some of your peers aren't as uniquely positioned to say? Is there something about your career journey that has given you a really interesting intersection that others may not have? How, when you write things, make sure that it's not just for the current role in the current moment, but what is it about what you do and what you say that others think about beyond your current role and where you're going? And so really think about that. Think about the stuff that you're doing and how you can position in such a way that it's sustainable. Now, I wanted to bring this to life. I put together my own content bucket some years ago when I really got serious about posting. I put together some buckets and really tried to think through, what do I have to say? What are the areas that I think are my ownable areas that I feel like I have something to say? So I've given you guys a little bit, and I'm not going to go through these one by one, but you can see that there are 4 kind of clear buckets that I tend to post about. Communications as a strategic lever, or communications as a business driver, that whole bucket. And so there's a lot that if you followed me before, you'll see that I will really sort of think about what role comms plays in an organization, an association, what it plays, where we stand amongst our peers in the C-suite and things like that. Another one that I write a lot about is not just leadership operating principles. And what is it, how is it that I show up as a leader, but also life principles, and how do they really translate to who I am as a person and how I apply that to the way I show up as a leader. So there's a lot that I really talk about there. I also dig into advice for mentorship. The thing that in the slide prior, I talked about what's that unique role that you have that you can bring. And so a really big emerging area for me that I think gets the most engagement is I spent my entire career working in the public relations agency world before I went in-house to do communications. And so in a lot of ways, I'm kind of a translator. I'm able to talk about how to apply some of the things from my career in PR to what it's like doing in-house communications. So that to me is interesting because it's bridging 2 audience worlds for me. I have a very extensive network of folks from the PR world, and then I've grown a network of folks in-house. So that intersection of those 2 audiences has really emerged for me as a very, very active group of people who are engaged in my content. And then for me, and this is kind of where you need to think about from an association perspective, because I'm considered a spokesperson of AAAS, I'm very careful and thoughtful about what I post about my organization, because I recognize that reporters are following me and peers are following me. So I never want to confuse what I personally believe versus what the organization believes. So you'll see that my content's a lot lighter when it comes to what I'm doing on the organizational front. I absolutely will celebrate things that my team is doing. I'll amplify things that the organization is doing. I will comment and try to, engage with what my colleagues are posting. But knowing that my subject matter expertise is in these other areas, that's really where I have focused versus where I think, some of you here on this call might actually be a spokesperson or subject matter expert where you'll see your content buckets lean a lot heavier into what you can bring to your field or your area of expertise. And so what I want to do, if I can ask everyone to just pause for a moment, take out a piece of paper and pen, if you're able to, and we're going to spend just a few minutes having you all pause and ask yourself, why do I want to post? What do I have to say, and who needs to hear it? We won't have time now, just because it's a short webinar, to be able to go into what are your top content pillars in those bucket areas, but I want you to take a moment if you can. It is right now 12:15. We will give you 5 minutes if folks can sit down and start to ask yourself the why, the what, and the who, and then we will keep going. And then if you all can, as you guys are thinking this through, I would love to see any comments in the chat. If you all want to chime in and kind of, give your why. If you all could do that, that would be great. If anyone had, as you're going through it, feel free to chime in also about what do you have to say and who needs to hear it. So if in the next few minutes you all can do that, we can then keep it going. Thanks, Jen. I see you posted in the chat that your why is helping people make work better. I love that. Keep them coming in the chats as you're starting to answer these for yourself. I'd love to see some interactivity during this segment. Exactly. Jalen, I completely agree. Start small. That's why it's helpful to have some lenses: professional, leadership, personal. All right, we're going to give you another moment or two, and then we'll keep it going in the interest of time. But as I'm going along, I'd love for folks to chime. All right, I think I've given you guys enough time, so we're going to keep it going. Once you define your platform, you need to think about optimizing your profile. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be the best example of this, but I've broken mine down for you just to give a little watch outs. There are other parts of the profile that certainly you can dig into, but I think there are some basic things that one should think about. One, I know some of this is obvious, so forgive the obviousness of it all, but these are all things that help. That space, that header image can work harder for you than it probably does. I see plenty of people who don't put anything up there, or if they do, it has zero connection to their personal brand or their value. So in my case, because I'm a spokesperson, I have a picture of our building that I took, I think maybe on my first day, that I put up. So you can tell that there's some lighting issues with it, but I wanted people to know right away to associate me with that brand. I've seen plenty of people who have something that is more specific to things that they want to evoke with their brand. So you can think about that too. Goes without saying, think very carefully about what picture you want people to see of you, because that really evokes who you are. Descriptive headline. I've seen this done a bunch of different ways. Some people maybe talk about topic areas that they're an expert in. Others may talk about previous roles or memberships they're part of. Mine is very intentionally written this way. I think because of my role, I want people to quickly know who I am, where I work, some of my previous experience in my memberships. This is an important one. This next one, I have my profile optimized for creator mode. It's something you can turn on. It basically means that when someone comes to your profile and let's say they like what you're posting, the follow button is prominent. If you are not listed as creator mode, that actually means that someone has to seek the follow button and then you'll get a lot more requests for connection. I actually think this is an important one if you really want to start posting. And then this is maybe a no-brainer, but you'll be amazed how many people don't necessarily think about this. If you want to be searchable and if you actually want to reach beyond your network, make sure your posts are public. On the next part, think about your summary. Who are you? What's your experience? What's your value proposition? How do you think? Mine is just a very quick recap of some of the elements that maybe Tiffany shared when she introduced me. And then featured could work a lot harder for you. I've picked some of my biggest posts that kind of, speak to some of the content that I know people have engaged with the most or that help people understand how I think about certain areas in my sector. So those are the ones I've highlighted under featured. And then, under experience, I have some memberships I'm a part of. Even in the memberships, I've listed a little descriptor of what they are. And then lots of people, I think of their profile as another version of their resume. I intentionally have not done that. I have tried to tell a quick story about, some of my experiences so that folks can get a really quick snapshot. So think about moving beyond the resume into what do you want someone to know and capture about previous roles. Now, moving on from there are lots of other things you can optimize your profile, but I think that at least are some of the key elements. Now, writing. This is the thing that gets a lot of people stuck, and so I wanted to spend a little time on this. Essentially, if I could give you one aha that I've had, do not write if you're not inspired. Don't force it. We will know. We will know when we're reading your content. So don't do it. That'd be my recommendation. They say write what you know and write what inspires you. Some key real quick tips on writing. Start with a compelling hook. As you all know, when you're scrolling the LinkedIn feed, that 1 to 2 sentence in the beginning will make or break whether or not someone clicks more. So that to me, if you spend your time on anything, that's the thing that you really want, to have someone go, I wonder what they mean about that. So you'll be amazed how much that matters. The other thing too is there are different ways that you can, of course, tell the story or whatever it is you're trying to do. This is creative writing more than it is just, block text. So think of it as scanning. I want to scan and I want to really sort of have you evoke something. So sometimes it's a personal story with a story arc. Sometimes it's lists or lessons or other sort of formats that are easier to digest. If you go back and look at some of my posts, you'll see that I have maybe 1 sentence per line, and I've done some things with the formatting to kind of draw you in. I love the use of parallel construction for effect. Sometimes, I will have a bunch of, for lack of a better term, bullets or, content grouped together that it has like parallel construction so that it really brings you into the post. Again, avoid block text as you can. It is not the sort of thing that is easier to helpful when you're scanning. Sometimes I use symbols if I want to call your people's attention to things. I also tag people and organizations, but only if it really makes sense for engagement. If I'm writing about a topic and I want someone to chime in and I think they'll have something compelling to say, then I will tag them. Or if I'm talking about a person and they're on LinkedIn, and then I will tag them. So think about that as well. And then one of the biggest things, if you're optimizing not just for sharing your perspective, but you also want to engage, you have to end with something. End with a question. I say action. There might be something where you're asking someone to register or to attend or whatever may be, but ending with a question to me is key. I always think about, because you want other people to share their opinion. You want people to kind of chime in with their own story. And then, to the point that I had before, get inspired. Writing to me, you'll see here to the right, I have my own system that I've created. It started in the notes app in my phone, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But once I started to get more formal and I had a lot of different bucket areas, I use a free version of Airtable. It's a cloud-based project management system. And as topics were coming to me throughout the week, I just went into my phone app and I added them in and I categorized them. And every week when when I'm thinking about what do I want to write about, either it came to me because it's something I was grappling with at work or something I wish somebody knew or thought differently about, and that's what really inspired me, or it was something that I went back to and thought of a few weeks ago, and I finally felt ready to say something because some idea kind of popped up in my head. So really think about that. The other thing, which I'll share momentarily, is that um, LinkedIn isn't just about original posts, it's also about comments. If you created a very compelling comment on someone's post, because it really, you had something to say, turn it into something longer. Um, Sometimes folks who I know follow me and want to hear from me, I will say to them, what should I write about? What do you wish you heard from me? And so actually one of my mentees gave me at least 5 posts in the mentorship category that I have been kind of slowly writing about. Track the things you're doing, keep track of it so you remember what it is you've been writing about. And then also, LinkedIn has a lot of analytics. I have the paid premium version, so I get more than if you have the free version. But that kind of gives you an indicator of what's working and what's not, and what kind of content you might want to write about. So that hopefully gets you a little bit inspired. And then I'm not going to go into too many details here in the interest of time, but there are a bunch of different formats you can use. If you're just starting now and you're intimidated by visuals, that's okay. Text works. This post here on the left, my text only post, has gotten way more engagement than any of the posts I'm about to show you. And that's really because it was in that content bucket area that I was telling you about, bridging 2 worlds, the PR agency world and the in-house world. And then I used a format that was really helpful, expectation, reality, expectation, reality. The amount of people who chime from both communities, this is definitely one of the most popular posts that I've done in probably the past year or 2. So text works. You don't have to be intimidated if you're not an image person. The one on the right, text with photo, was one that I used for my organization just to talk about an incredible moment we had. So I just screen grabbed a video. Text with custom visual, not the prettiest of the images I've ever done, but this was I was wading into a very big topic. Lots of people in my sector talk about PR versus comms versus marketing. So I knew an image about that would get people to read what I was writing. So I did that one for effect. And that was by far the most popular thing I've posted in the years I've been posting on LinkedIn. And then the one here on the right, text with document, I was writing about a few different community events that I went to. And because the photo gallery isn't great, I just brought them together, PDF them, and put that as a document file. There are obviously other formats you can use, but if you do nothing else, if you have a great photo from an event, or if you do text only, that will be completely sufficient. Okay, best practices versus common mistakes. Wanted to share this because I see a lot of folks who are trying to engage for the first time and they don't necessarily have all of the haven't been maybe following all the ins and outs of LinkedIn and the algorithm and what's working and what's not. So really, if you are trying to get active on LinkedIn and you want to build followership and engagement, resharing alone won't get you there. And so if you can, at least post once a week, something original. One of the best ways that I think I've grown my engagement and followership is that I actually started following a bunch of peers of mine, ones who are actively engaging. I followed them and then I start commenting on their stuff. Another best practice is content pillars. There's a reason why I'm sharing that with you. If you really want to build a consistent personal brand, it helps to do the work to think about the why and then the what. What is it you have to say? This one's important. This next one, as a comms person at an association, I think this one's really important. Before you really delve into this, especially if you're in a role that could be a subject matter expert or an executive, make sure you know what your org's strategy and policy is. Are you allowed to post about things at work? Do they have expectations of you? Is there a certain thing, make sure you talk to your comms team. That's a plug. We actually have some stuff that we're going to be rolling out with subject matter experts. So it's actually helpful to know what your organization's social media strategy is, particularly on LinkedIn. And then the last two here, cultural sensitivity. There will be a week or two where I post nothing because it doesn't feel right. Because the content that I have without context is fine and it's perfectly great. But if the tone doesn't match what's happening in the moment, it will feel disconnected, and the folks you're engaging with, I think, will see that. So I try really hard to think about what's happening at the organization. Is there something that just feels off tone from what the organization is saying and doing? And then what's happening in the world and what's happening locally with the community. So think about that. Give yourself will this land right now in this landscape sort of gut check. And then finally, platforms like LinkedIn are really cracking down on AI only generated content. So I have absolutely used AI as a thought partner, but try if you can to use your own thoughts. People are following you, and so the authenticity matters. All right. Next thing I wanted to talk to you about is consistency matters over volume. If you are just starting today, and this is intimidating, which by the way, I get it, it's very intimidating to start to put your thoughts out there. Start small. One original post per week. Once you've got your content buckets, think about that, and then think about what's the one thing a week I'm going to do. I think LinkedIn says that even just one post a week makes a difference. And then start engaging. Start going to other people's, follow people, engage with your peers, engage with your network and others, and start doing something like comment, share, save, whatever it may be. Even those things will have a modest change. But I think if you really want optimal engagement, my suggestion is to really shift to what I do, which is anywhere, probably I'm in the 1 to 3 range for posts, but try to do multiple original posts. The algorithm rewards consistency. Every week, try to do something. And then actually, if you can believe it, sometimes your analytics will be even stronger if you leave a really long, meaningful comment on other people's posts. Realistically, not all of you will be able to do this. I do try to scan and comment where I can. So if it's not every day, maybe it's every, a few times a week where I'll really go there and put some meaningful comments. All right, and then measuring success. This is the thing that people tell me all the time that is frustrating to them. I'm here to tell you the vanity metrics alone aren't the indicator of success. And I'll say that because it really depends. When I gave you the why are you posting? One might be that you're attracting opportunities. Maybe Tiffany, if you don't mind, I'll just share that Tiffany consistently reads my content, but I didn't even know she was reading it because she wasn't as directly engaging in it as some other folks that I see. They call there's this concept of there are a lot more people reading your content than are engaging with it. So the numbers alone won't tell you the story. Think about other indicators of success, things like saves and sends. If someone is saving your content, that means they want to go back to it later because they found it really valuable. If people are commenting in a very high quality way, if you are getting a direct message because of it, if I can't even tell you how many people who I didn't even know were following me said, hey, I love reading your content whenever I'm in person with someone. So I think more broadly than what success looked like. You might have a post that got like 10 reactions, but if one of those 10 reactions turned into something meaningful, then I think it's worth it. So my suggestion to you is not to get disheartened by the data and to really look beyond the numbers. And then I'm going to give you a case in point as to some things that I have seen just from increasing my engagement on LinkedIn. On the far left, that text only post that I showed you all, that I said was one of my best posts in a while. It had 43,808 impressions, 31,000 plus people reached. What's the most interesting and what LinkedIn has changed with the algorithm is they now give you content on, or they give you analytics on saves and sends. That post was valuable to people because 33 people saved it because they wanted to go back to it later. My theory is that these are people that were applying and looking to transition from PR to in-house, and they wanted to really ground themselves on, what they think this is going to be about versus what it's going to be about to go in-house. So I think that's why I had a lot of saves. And then sends, people actually thought it valuable enough to send it to other people in their network. So that's what's interesting about the analytics. On the far right, I'd mentioned to you, comments can be just as powerful as posts, maybe even more. A peer of mine who I follow, who's got a huge following, as you can see her data at the top, I did one post and it's gotten more than 5,000 impressions. And not only that, I got some followers from just that one comment. So there's, even if you do nothing else but maybe engage a little bit, one post a week, if you can do some meaningful comments every week, that alone can help grow your engagement and presence. And then the stuff in the middle, I got invited to a LinkedIn Live. That's the one on the top. I got invited to participate in a webinar. A podcast, the one at the bottom. And then I have submitted a piece for the International Public Relations Association because the editor thought one of my posts was really compelling and wanted me to turn it into a long post. So, for me, I know that these things are working because I'm seeing the results of it. So with that, I am going to turn to Q&A. Hopefully some folks have been sharing stuff in the chat because I wanted to make sure we left some time before we wrap today.
You do have some questions. First off, how do you suggest that early career professionals tailor and promote for future growth? Do you think that the same strategies apply?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say yes. I think the considerations are a little bit different maybe about what you're going to be commenting on as an early career person, but absolutely. There might be things you're learning about at your internship or your first job or whatever it may be. There may be some interesting stories you've read that are in the news that you want to comment on and have a take on. There may be some things that you've learned from a mentor. I think the point of this is growing your personal brand doesn't have to be at the executive level. It can absolutely be at any level. It's what is it that you have to say? What value do you bring? And what do you believe? Those things I think can translate no matter what level you're in. And I think especially if you're just starting off your career, even more reason to follow folks you admire and to comment on their content. And that helps you build a network of some folks that you can maybe network with one day. But the fact that you've been engaged means that they will continue to see your name there. So I've seen that work very successfully.
So if someone has a really long kind of response to a post, do you typically repost that? Do you reply? Like, what's your best strategy on that for engagement?
Yeah, we didn't, there's so many more things that could have covered in this presentation, but one of the most important things is they say the first maybe hour or two of your original post and the engagement with it will indicate how successful it is and whether or not the algorithm really amplifies it. So I make it a point to respond to every single comment I get in my posts. And if someone has taken the time to write something thoughtful, then I will take the time to respond back. And then sometimes they may say something that's really interesting. So I will ask them a follow-up question and tag them to make sure that there's further engagement. I think some of the most exciting things that are happening on LinkedIn are in the comment sections of posts. And so I think, if you do nothing else, follow people and start engaging and really get into that. So absolutely. I mean, and it might be that there's some inspiration for you to write something based on a long post, or maybe even inspiration for me. If enough people are saying stuff about something I've commented on, it absolutely might inspire me to write something else.
And so you come to this as a communications professional and certainly I do too, but what would you sort of say to someone who is not kind of coming out of that lane? Maybe they're a policy person, maybe they're a CEO who hasn't traveled that
Yeah.
channel. Like, how do you begin and write? Because you've called this an exercise in creative writing.
Yeah. I think, listen, yes, there are some things that work well for this format. You don't have to be a writer to do this. I think you just need something to say, and you may have a personal story you want to say. It's showing up as who you are, authentically you. And that doesn't mean that it needs to be beautiful prose. I gave you some writing tips. Those are because those are things that I've tested that have worked well. My suggestion is to really, spend some time on LinkedIn and really follow some folks and get some content and really understand what it is that people are saying and what is attractive to you in terms of, wow, I really want to spend reading this comment and replying to it. I think that's okay. You just need to be yourself, right? And you need to, I think if I can say anything about this, it is make sure you're coming across as authentically you. There are some trainings that you can probably do on how to improve your writing skills. There are plenty of things on LinkedIn and how to do that, but I think it's more important that you're showing up as yourself and not trying to force a writing style that is not natural to you. But there are still some best practices on don't do a lot of block text. It's really hard for people to read. So even some of the basic things that I said to you still apply, no matter whether or not you're a professional writer like me or you are someone who maybe doesn't do that as much. So.
Can you give this group kind of a couple of quickie examples of like questions that you thought are like kind of thought provoking to end with or to start with? That is there kind of a formula there that you lean on?
Yeah, I think that question has to do with my recommendation to end with the question. So I will take that as the question that you have asked. But think of it this way. If you are writing about, okay, so I'll give you guys a real example. That post that I'd mentioned about when I was in the PR world and I wanted to move to an in-house role. And then when I finally got that role, I had a post about expectations versus reality. So a way to encourage engagement might be, does this track folks that are, people who are in-house? What were expectations that you had that, also like, what did I miss? What are expectations you had that the reality slapped you in the face and you realized that it was nothing like what you expected? So I invited people who are my peers who did that same transition to chime. And then and I always try to invite people, like my perspective is my own. What am I missing? Does this track with what you believe? I don't think you need to overthink the question. Think of it as, okay, here's what I think. Does this track? Is there something else you can add? Is there something I'm missing? Even that alone can get you engagement. Yes, you could absolutely think about thought provoking, but I think sometimes we overthink it. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just invite people to share their own personal stories that align or don't align with what you've shared.
So how do you cross over that kind of initial barrier of, I mean, we're talking about very personal kind of like thoughts and process. So there's like a personal element there that you're kind of putting yourself out there. And I'm just wondering what recommendation you would give for kind of making that initial jump.
Yeah, so I'll spend a moment and explain that when I started, when I started on LinkedIn, I was very hesitant to say things. I worked at an agency. I was worried that if I said the wrong thing, a client could fire us. So it took me years to overcome that feeling of, I don't know if I should say things, but I realized I, just by the nature of the work that I do, the trial and error, the way that I, try to lead and be a manager, those things, if one person resonates with it, it might be worth sharing it, right? So that's my why though. My why is that I feel like I have some things that I've learned that might help others as well. So I think you have to lean into your why and really make sure that that leads with why you're joining the platform and what you'll write about. So I use that as my grounding every day. Believe it or not, even as someone who writes for a living, I'm like, okay, got to get motivated. What do I want to say this week? It's an ongoing thing, but it feels so good once I do it. So sometimes I think you just need to overcome that initial hesitance and do it anyways. That's the biggest advice I can give you. Got to start somewhere.
Well, Tal, this was fantastic. I think everybody learned a lot. I know I got a lot of really good tips. Thank you so much for donating your time today for us. I hope I see everybody in May and the allergy season kind of wanes itself. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us. Bye bye.